has a new program in global studies that in many ways resembles what we do. And so I look forward to the conversations that will continue after this morning. So first off, just a bit about myself. When I went to graduate school, I was faced with the conundrum of needing to find a topic that everyone had written about, but you just find one little corner of it that had not been written about, or I could maybe find a very obscure group to write about that, that no one had really talked about them, but they were asking really big questions. And I chose the latter. I wanted to study something international focused. I was interested in international relations, but international relations not always on the state level, right? But how people often find themselves. We are engaged in international relations here, right? It's now called Track 2 diplomacy, right? When non-governmental actors find one another and create a community, whether it's in the scholarly world, business world, activist world, right? And so I found a group. I discovered a particular group and I was in a history program, so I'm a historian of international relations in a way, and I found a group that this is significant for us even at this time, because they started almost 100 years ago today, in the summer of 1925. Their name was the Institute of Pacific Relations. Some of you may be familiar, the Institute of Pacific, but they're largely forgotten today. An unfortunate case, but there's a lot of lessons learned there, and I learned a lot of lessons from my work with them that have informed how I teach and how I think about international relations today. The Institute of Pacific Relations, they gathered together, they were scholars, journalists, business people, and after World War I, they made a decision on their own. They said, state actors have gotten us into all kinds of trouble. The secret diplomacy, nations, we can't rely on them to solve the world's problems. We need to find our counterparts, find people in other parts of the world, and around the Pacific especially. The League of Nations was not quite so focused on the Pacific, and so there was an opportunity for civilians, engaged civilians, to really find one another and to create their own community. And they did so. In July of 1925 in Hawaii, the first conference of the Institute of Pacific Relations. Many Americans from the mainland, some Hawaiians, Japanese, Chinese, Korean, Filipino, Australian, New Zealand, all found themselves, right? They met at the Punahou School, actually. Many years later, Barack Obama would go to school. And they met there for 2 weeks. And one of the participants was a university president, the Stanford University president at the time. His name was Ray Lyman Wilbur. And he reflected on that time. He said it was an intensely human experience. And that word's come up before, don't forget the humanity. When we think about international relations, we think state, diplomacy, but it was an intensely human experience. And he talked about men and women of different nationalities being together, living together, studying together. And they imagined what a new international community might look like. And I just take a lot of inspiration from that, right? Because they set out for themselves. Now, and this group, now, they didn't always get it right. They went on for another 30 years, of course. This group did not prevent depression. It didn't prevent war. It didn't prevent the chaos, decolonization, Cold War, and all the rest. No. But they were engaged citizens who stepped out and acted for themselves. I think it's a reminder for us as we consider some of the problems and limitations, I guess to put it diplomatically, that state actors are presenting us today. There's still a lot of room for us to act. So I finished up my PhD, and I thought, well, that would be the end of that. And then suddenly I was tasked with leading a new program at UT Austin, International Relations and Global Studies. And then I had another question for myself, well, what is global studies? How do we define this? How do we think about it? And higher ups at UT, well, they didn't know either. I said, well, how should I think about this? And they said, well, figure it out. And so I've been trying to figure it out for the last 12 years. And so I'm going to be sharing with you just a little bit about how we at UT think about global studies, how it might overlap a little bit with how you think about global studies and some of the opportunities that we have. So I'll go ahead and get it right. What I do is on the first day of my class, Introduction to International Relations and Global Studies, I show 2 slides. I said, in a very traditional sense, international relations, when you think, well, how do I think about the world through the lens of international relations? This map might come to mind, right? And I asked them, what do you see? What comes out to you? Well, borders, national borders come out to you, right? And also, well, the global north seems to be emphasized here, right? What else draws your attention, right? Let's see. What's at the center of the world? Well, of course, it's the United States. Oh, and actually not just the United States, but Texas. Not just Texas, Austin, Texas. And so my students are very happy to see the picture of the world in which they are at the very center of it. I said, but of course, this is not the only way of looking at the world, right? Okay, so in 1999, out of Japan, we have different attempts. I'm not a geographer, I know there have been map making over the years, right? How do we depict the world in 2 dimensions successfully? Well, this projection, this gives us a very different view of the world, and what I would say is closer to a global studies view of the world, right? We are connected. We're all connected, and, well, the center now is the Pacific, right? Maybe we can agree on that. And I thought that, actually, and for many years, I thought I'm being pulled in different directions, right? How can a program teach both international relations and global studies at the same time? Is it possible to reconcile these 2 ways of looking at the world? Well, I don't know if it is, but we're doing our best. So how do we do this? Within IRG, we have 4 study tracks at NTNU yesterday. I realized that you have the 4 as well, and I think they actually map on quite nicely to what we do at UT. Your politics and economics track, I'd say, is broadly related to international security, geopolitics. Right? We have an international political economy track. Wendy's been helping us, especially in that track. Culture, media, and the arts, science, technology, and the environment. All right, so we might see these 4 tracks in some ways as neatly divided, that the first 2 tracks might be our IR tracks, and the 3rd and 4th might be the global studies tracks, right? The first 2 international, the second, the 3rd and 4th transnational, right? People and goods moving across borders, not respecting borders. But what I try to do as much as possible is to remind students that we can teach international through a global lens, right? And what does that mean? Looking not at just national security, but at human security, right? What does the world look like when we look at it through those lenses? International political economy, thinking about development not just as state measures GDP, but a human development index, as we see now, right? That's how we bring the global into the international. Likewise, I'd say it's important that we think about how to bring the international into the global, right? To not forget that when it comes to culture, identity, these are not just within civil society, but states care about these a lot too, right? And of course, science, technology, environment, sustainability. How do we have global governance in these areas? So these 4 tracks we have now, and again, this is very small. I'm not going to be quizzing you on this, don't worry. What does our curriculum look like? We have an introduction, we have foundations class, we have capstone research classes, but otherwise We send students out into other departments so they can get their geography, economics, history, anthropology. We rely on interdisciplinary collaboration. We cannot do what we do without partnerships. Right? Dr. Wong and I, we represent 50% of the entire faculty within IRG, and we have 750 students. How do we manage to do it? It's only through collaboration. It's only through partnerships that we can make this work. We rely as well on the area studies students, right? All IRG students must have a regional focus, and they must take extra foreign language. They must study abroad as well. Here's another point of connection, and where I hope we can get more students coming here to Taiwan, because I think that this is a wonderful place for students to learn about any of these areas. We also have, and I'll, beyond the curriculum, and I'm just going to kind of quickly run through, we want to have student experiences outside the classroom. That is very important, right? Research in disinformation, innovations in peace and development, another research lab we have on campus that connects again development, security, human security. I need to say thank you to Dr. Wong for helping to develop the Texas Journal of International Affairs with undergraduate students who just launched this spring. And my last point here about experiences, was already mentioned. I am involved with the United Nations Association of Austin. This is an advocacy organization that promotes the Sustainable Development Goals and others. I think that the UN, through the SDGs, provides a wonderful opportunity for interdisciplinary collaboration, not within an institution, but across institutions as well. It's important to be able to speak a common language so that when we go out and have these study abroad experiences, that we are able to measure what we do and to be able to communicate effectively. 10 years ago, as the SDGs were first established, I had the opportunity of bringing students to a forum in Austin. At the time, the UN said, we want to hear from young people about what the next global goals should look like. Austin, Texas was selected as one of the cities where there would be a forum. And there were dignitaries, mayors, ex-mayors, all there at this round table discussing what's the next table. I brought my students, and they all became the leaders of the roundtable discussions while we were there. Why? Because they were the young people. They should be leading the agenda for what comes next. And so it was an incredibly empowering experience for those students. And, you know, and I tell students even to this day, I said, you know that your former colleagues, helped develop the SDGs. It was the conversations that we had that ended up going into New York and became the basis of that. And now again, 10 years later, there is a new UN initiative. I just got the word right out of Washington, something called the Engine Room for the Future. They're looking to young people. They want you to be involved in ways so that your voices are heard. And I am now once again recruiting a new generation of students to try to be involved in this so that their voices can be amplified. And this needs to be an international discussion as well, or a global discussion, I should say, as we think about the future. So again, the road to the future, what do we do beyond the SDGs? This is the post-2030 moment. It's going to be up to us and to you, and so I look forward to continuing the conversation. And once again, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you.